I went to retrieve a shotgun one time in the middle of this feud at 13, and my uncles told me it wasn't loaded. I was a bit... People think that I've turned into a religious nut. And if you were literally confronted by demonic forces, which I can prove that is on camera, and we made a part of that, all led me on the path back towards the light. But you know, when you're getting there and you know you're nearly there, when you fall, then it's so hard to pick yourself up because you know how wrong it is. Mm-hmm. If you want to help us spread the word of the Lord, please subscribe to our channel, tap the notification button, and
like, comment, and spread the good news.
God bless.
Hello and welcome to Reclaim the Faith podcast. I'm Danielle Magennis. You may be wondering why I'm on my own today, but that's because my co-host John Connors is across the table today. He is actually our guest. He's going to tell his story of darkness and delight, and it's raw, real, and deeply rooted in redemption and grace. So let's dive in. Welcome, Mr. Connors.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Danielle.
No choice in the matter, let's be honest. No, let's dive in. One of the questions I want to ask you first is, why do you want to tell your story today?
People think that I've turned into a religious nut. And I suppose I'm here to tell my story. As a result of that, I'd like to say to those people, if you were contacted beyond the grave by your father, your mother, God intervened in your life so many times. If you were literally confronted by demonic forces, which I can prove that is on camera, that we made a part of the TV show, and then at your worst point in your life, you turn to Jesus and ask him for help, and you get peace and serenity like you never had before, what would you believe? So I'm just here to tell that story, and people are advising me to stop with the God stuff. It's not good for my career. My career's on a high right now of loads of films coming out. But the reality is this: I made a promise to Jesus, which was, if he brought this peace to me, I would preach the word and I would tell people about Jesus and his love. So here it is. I'm just keeping a promise to Jesus.
And let's be honest, it's something that both of us feel, and we are both in the acting world, and like you as well, I felt the same with stepping out. But there's something that whenever you start following God, you get this peace, and it's just something that you feel like you have to do. So with that being said, let's go back to the very beginning. Let's go back to when you were a child. What was family life like for you?
It was interesting. My mother and father got engaged young, as travellers do, and especially back then in the 80s. Maybe my mother might have been 16, he might have been 17 and a half, 18. And they were engaged for a couple of years. And near the end of that engagement, my father got drunk one night and hijacked a taxi and crashed into a wall and broke his hip and was put on armed guard in a hospital. And my mother went in to visit him and escaped him out the window, and they jumped on a ferry to England, where I was born, much to the criticism of my brothers my whole life. And it's funny, that circumstance of me being born in London, despite the fact that I came back before I was 1 year of age, and I don't look like an Englishman, like I don't have a top hat and a monocle. Do I look like the representation of what it means to be English?
Definitely not.
But despite having that, I had that kind of crutch or the chip on my shoulder. So I always wanted to kind of be more Irish than everybody else, and that's why I'm fascinated with Irish history and culture and whatnot. So I was born in King's Cross. It's a place now that is very gentrified in London, but back then it was like crack and prostitutes, and you know, my mother would say it was a very scary place, you know. My father used to work a bit on the building sites. He had a lot of family over there, McCarthy's and Moorings, all cousins of my own again. And my mother had a sister over there, my Aunt Bridget, who's now back here. So when she went over, actually, the first thing she did was go straight to Bridget and stay with Bridget and Bridget's husband, Martin Purcell, my uncle. And so they continued sort of their engagement until it was official and they got married and all that, you know, as you do. And then they moved back, and when they moved back, we moved to Coolock, where I've been more or less my whole life, just different camps around Coolock or different places around Coolock. I do have a lot of memories, like really, like I have a really kind of strong long-term memory, because I've memories of my father, loads of memories of my father and my mother, when we were in a particular site that I left when I was 18 months. So I used to say, you say these memories to my mother, and she'd go, "But how, son? You couldn't be." I said, "But that was in Grove Lane, the site." And she said, "How would you know? You left there at about 18 months. So I've loads of memories there. It's weird. They do say that people who experience childhood trauma tend to have a better long-term memory, and it's they actually call it the memory of the psychotic. Tiernan, my good friend, which we'll talk a person we'll talk a good about and a good bit about, taught me that. So we lived around there, and my father eventually went to prison, obviously, for what he did. And I've memories of visiting him in an institution in North County Dublin, actually here, in Port Rand Mental Hospital. Me mother and me and my brother Joe would go and leave Coolock, and we get the bus into the city centre, and then we get the train from the city centre to North County Dublin, another bus, and then a big long walk up a hill, down a hill, and then we go into Port Rand, and we'd visit him there. And he used to be like doing martial arts moves, and he'd have this white robe on. And so me and my brother Joe were convinced that we were visiting him in his dojo, where he was going to gain his black belt, and we were just waiting for his black belt to come and waiting to see him. And then I remember one day the Chinese man that was in there with him, who was another patient, we didn't know. We thought it was his sensei, and the sensei went along with it, So it's weird now to look back, because I still have such fun memories. Obviously, it's messed up a bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I do remember there was like an anxiousness between him and my mother, of course, and he was mentally ill from a young age. He was born in Limerick, and whatever it was, I think 13, 14. There was a weird actual story, actually. My grandparents told me. His father is Johnny Connors, my grandfather, granddad. Such a strong man, went through an awful lot in his life and still standing. And then his mother, Margarita McCarthy. I have a lot of McCarthy in me. Johnny, my grandfather, would be half McCarthy and half Connors. She's double McCarthy, so I have a lot of McCarthy in me. They lived in Limerick, and with all the McCarthys down there. They told me a story once, actually, that when he was a child in Weston in Limerick, that they were outside the garden and someone was inside the house holding him. Yeah?
Right.
One of the neighbours said someone's inside holding him, and they went in and no one was holding him. It was a weird thing. And then when he was older, like before he hit his teens, his room door was locked, and there was someone in the room with him, and they couldn't figure out who was in the room with him. They went in, there was nobody. I don't know what that means, but there were just two stories that actually stood out, and I don't know if that has any relevance to his mental health, or, I don't know actually what I'm getting at, but they're things that stand out. So when he was 13, they left and they went to Carlow, which I know they had a great time. And I think a lot of my grandfather and a lot of my aunts and uncles on that side, their fondest memories was in Carlow when they moved to Carlow,
Yeah.
And then they went to Birmingham, and in the 70s, a lot of Irish, there was discrimination, and the Troubles was going on and all that stuff. And, discrimination for being Irish, not a traveller, because to be Irish that time was it was tough. It was tough in England. And my grandfather, I know, befriended an old Jamaican man. Or when I say old, I'm just imagining my grandfather now, but obviously he would have been a young man.
Yeah.
But he loved the stew that my grandmother made, And he helped him. The Jamaican guy helped him wire up the house, electric, but on the mace, as we call it, free. So they had a couple of tough years there, and then he, to get out of a rough place like Limerick, to go to a place called Darndale. and I love Darndale. I grew up in Darndale myself. They were the first travellers in Darndale. And I know they got a bit of discrimination, but largely I think they got accepted. And like me as well, and largely I got accepted. But I know that he was always a little bit outside the box, my father, and thought outside the box. He was very intelligent. His nickname was the Professor. And he was also very charming. My mother, when she used to get drunk, she used to say, "Go away out of that," to me, Joe and Packy, me brothers. "Go away out of that. See, Connors, you charm the knickers off and none."
Well, I don't know about that.
I know that's not the greatest thing to say on a religious podcast. I hope people take it as a joke. But anyway, that was a Connor's trait, a bit of charm. And obviously, my mother fell for his charm.
Right.
My mother was a very good looking woman. So they got engaged, and yeah, back anyway. Fast forward, he lived around Coolock. We lived in a camp, in her family camp for a while. We lived in a small trailer then outside his mother and father house, and then eventually we moved into a place in Kilmore, and that was a weird time. We moved into flats, which was just weird for us, very weird as travellers as well, you know, and not having your family around you. That was the weirdest thing. And when we landed there, we didn't get the best of introductions, let's just say. Me and Joe, my brother Joe, went to the shop one day, and we were going to get bread and milk. And these two young fellas who were a bit older than us stopped us on the way back and were calling us knackers. And they took the bread and milk and threw it all over the ground. And we went back and told our father, but he was enraged because we didn't stand up for ourselves. Me and Joe were actually a bit soft when we were children because our father was very loving, just very loving, you know, and loved children. And so we were, again, just a bit soft, and we weren't in boxing yet or fighting or whatever. And all of that would later change. But he did say you need to defend yourself and you need to fight them back. So we basically ambushed them, got them back, and gave them a few slaps and got a bit of revenge. And I remember up there, my father would show us films. Up there in the flats, he would show us like Martin Scorsese kind of films, The Goodfellas, and he would show us Scarface, like mad films to show children 100%, but the films that ended up being my favourite films. Yeah. So it was actually the beginning of a film education for me. And there were kind of ups and downs, you know. He would turn into different people, morph into different people. One of the people he used to think he was Dominic McClinchy, the IRA man. Another person he thought he was Arnold Schwarzenegger. He thought he was Terminator. Sometimes Van Damme, Bruce Lee, and it was sometimes scary, sometimes funny, you know.
Yeah.
But he was always well intentioned, especially when he was in his right mind. He was always very loving, hugging. I remember one time actually, he just gave out to us, which was rare for him because I think we might have hit our cousin April, who was like our double first cousin, like our sister.
Yeah.
And her father was my father's brother, and he died 2 years previous. So they had a real connection, and she looked at him like a father figure. So I think we hit her. We were only children ourselves, but he came in then. I might even give us a slap or two. But we did. But I remember it hurt him so bad. He was crying on his knees for forgiveness. You know what I mean? And we were going, go away. And then he brought us over to, I'll never forget, he brought us over to Dunn Stores then to buy videotapes. I think he bought us Batman or something. And that was it then. It was grand. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was kind of up and down in that way. And obviously there was a lot more going on that I don't know. But there was one time my mother told me to go in and get my father in the room, and he hadn't been right for a few days. And I went in to the room to get him. I think it might have been for breakfast. And there was drool coming out of his mouth, and there was tablets everywhere, and he tried to kill himself.
Okay.
And then I went and got my mother and blah, blah, blah. I went out to the hospital. We ended up moving, me, my mother and my brothers, back to the camp, her family camp, with her mother and father, great parents to her and great grandparents to me, and all my aunts and uncles and cousins, like a huge, the only way to describe it would be like a reservation, you know, like about 50 cousins living with you know, 12 aunts and uncles, second, third cousins, family, friends. And we moved back there, and I remember my father came and visited us one day, but he wasn't in his right mind. And this is actually something I never said, and never actually said it to anybody until a few years ago. A conversation me and my brother had. We both said it at the same time, yet we never even said it to each other. That's how big of an impact it had. So he was losing his mind a bit, and he was in, and he was a bit manic, and I think he was flirting with the idea he was James Bond and whatever. But I remember that he embarrassed me and my brother Joe in front of our cousins. We felt embarrassed,
Yeah.
and he was being manic, and my mother was trying to calm him and say, "Come back, Johnny," and whatever, at another time, she wasn't getting through to him. But the fact that he saw the embarrassment and the shame in our eyes, that's what actually sunk in for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that look he gave us when he realised it, like it was like a moment of sanity where he was just like, "Oh, I'm shaming them," and he left. And I remember feeling straight away like overwhelming guilt because he was such a great father, you know, and he taught me all the things that kind of, you know, came with me in my life, like always ask questions, never just go along with the herd. That's more or less what he said. And always stand up for what you believe in and fight for what you believe in. And like I took that literally, metaphorically, spiritually, in every way, you know. But I mean, it did shape me. Those pieces of advice shaped my whole persona. So I owe him so much, you know. So that was a big guilt, and I was out playing not too long after. That was the last time I ever saw him. I was playing and I heard him call me, and I heard his voice. It was like an echo, and I went to my mother and I said, "Daddy keeps calling me, where is he?" Like, and I couldn't see him, and she said, "Come in and have your dinner." And you know, for all she knew, I don't know where she knew he was or whatever. Actually, just can't say because I don't know. But we were having dinner then, a stew. About an hour later, two guards came in and told us that he was found dead, drowned in a river, basically in a lake outside his college, his secondary school that he used to go to in Darndale, Belcamp College, where he used to bring us to play as well. Me and my brothers, we used to go there, play with him, and hunting and like hunting around the place, like play hunting and just messing. It was actually a place of kind of great imagination for us. We used to love going there actually. And my father was a real, like he'd play with you like a child would play with you, you know, and become a child as well. He was real. So that's guilt. That was a guilt I never even talked about or never really acknowledged actually for a long, long time. A long time, up until a few years ago. So things after that.
Just to kind of take you back, I hope also you've made peace with that, because that
obviously we'll get to that.
Wasn't your doing, but we'll talk about that. You mentioned the trauma, and obviously this was the big start of it for you, especially growing up. I know you've said it before on other podcasts, growing up without the father figure. And I know you've stepped into that role at certain times with your family as well. But just to tell us, is that really when the descent into darkness began for you?
Yeah, it was. And I had father figures, just not a father. So I was lucky that like some of my uncles particularly, you know, were good father figures. And my grandfather, Paddy Ward, you know, he was the greatest man I've ever known. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no, you know, and I don't want to choose one person over, but he is, you know, he's the best example that I ever saw of a man. And he was a man with great integrity and was actually tough as nails, but also soft at the same time, would give his shirt off his back, a man of great faith. Shirt off his back for a stranger would help anybody, and I've seen it a million times. You know, I remember he got knocked down one time. I'm laughing because of how mad he was. He got knocked down by somebody and on the road, and he was an old man, and he wouldn't claim insurance or anything or go and do an accident, and he was genuinely hurt because he didn't want to mess up that person's insurance. And another uncle of mine was saying to him, "What's wrong with you? You get big money." He was like, "No, I wouldn't do that to the people. That's not right. Not an hour's luck." That's the kind of man he was, you know. And
that's where you get it from.
I don't know about that, but but yeah, he was a great father figure, and as I said, some of my uncles too. But not having a father for sure, what that did was for some people we became, I'd say, easy pickings, you know, because when you don't have a father, and particularly in my community, and particularly that time, people think that they can bully you and get away with it. There's going to be no repercussions. There's no father to take up for you, and also there's no father to teach you how to be a man, so you would be undesirable in other ways too, like, You know, me and Joe would have heard things like, you know, about us, we're never going to be proper men, and you know, and around possibly marrying people and this and that and the other, you know. And they were kind of insecurities and chips on our shoulder, you know, that definitely added to the trauma. The side effects of him passing, there's no doubt about it, you know what I mean? And my mother then had to assume both roles, you know, and she did brilliantly. And my mother, some of the bullying that she found out, she went to fight people like men. That's the way my mother was. My mother was a very empathetic person and put everybody else first, like humility to an extreme as well. But she was very tough, you know. My uncle, who's ironically nicknamed Brother, her brother, nicknamed her Kate LaMotta after Jake LaMotta, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And she was that kind of fighter too. She'd take a beating to give a beating. She'd out tough you. She was Rocky. You know what I mean?
She had to be.
Yeah, she had to be, exactly. And in fairness, like, she had great parents, you know, my grandfather, Paddy Ward, Big Daddy, as we all call him, all the grandchildren, because he was like all of our Big Daddy, you know, Big Daddies. And then her mother, Chrissy, who was a great traveller, activist and author and poet and a great storyteller. And I'd say I owe a lot to me being a storyteller and an actor to her, to be honest, you know. And she was always like, as well, she was always, you know, very brave as well. Always, you know, almost fearless, or being able to overcome fear. And you would try to emulate that, you know what I mean? And when I got into the political world, I tried to emulate that, you know. Until she told me one day, get out of the fucking politics, it's going to ruin your career. It did nothing for me.
Smart woman.
And I was like, okay, that's making a bit of sense. So, yeah, growing up then around Coolock and in the sites and whatever as well, we got bullied. We got bullied by kids that were older than us. You know, when you're a child, 8 or 9, like someone 3 years older than you is a big deal, you know. And then when we got a little bit older, even a few adults as well, there was a bit of that, physical, emotional, all that kind of stuff. And then I remember coming home one day after getting a bad baiting off somebody after school. And I wouldn't say it was bet, because that was kind of the promise I made to my father, to not say it was bet, you know. So I got a bad baiting. And I had black eyes and blood and whatever. But I remember my mother being very upset, but also angry, because she was seeing that I wasn't going to be able to defend myself. And this wasn't my mother's personality, but she said, you need to learn how to defend yourself, John, what's wrong with you? And it's her way of going, this life is tough, you know, which, because my mother normally would never, she was so gentle, she wouldn't, you know, she wouldn't lead with that, but I think she was trying to caution me, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember then watching Rocky, and the music in Rocky and going the distance. And I remember the Rocky part in round 14 where he went down and Mickey told him to down, stay down, and he wouldn't stay down.
Yeah.
He got back up and he didn't win the fight, but he didn't quit. And I was so inspired. And my brother Joe was so inspired as well. So he ended up joining boxing, but he quit after 2 weeks. He went to football instead. He said, that's a lot easier. He just took the football better, you know. The boxing club we went to, you know Mickey and Rocky?
Yeah.
Well, let's just say he was a very gentle trainer in comparison to my trainer.
It probably added to your trauma.
Oh, no. Our trainer, Joe Russell, and Joe Lawler as well, who was an Olympian, and Jerry Hanlon and Graham Stewart and Robbie Quigley and Carl Meehan as well. They were all a good training team, but Joe Russell was the head trainer and is still. And you have people like Michael Collins there now and all still doing great volunteer work, like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But he did say to me on the first night, he said, this is your first and last night. When you finish this, get your coat and get out of here, yeah? And I went, oh. So I got a bit afraid of this man. And then I went on a jog, and I was a little chubby child. But I was trying my best on the jog because I didn't want to get kicked out of the club at the end of the night. Like, I thought, there might be a door here, and maybe he's tested me, who knows?
Yeah.
So I ran enough for a little porky child that I was. And I came back, and at the end of the night, he came up to me and he said, come back Wednesday. So I came back, and I think he saw something. And truth be told, Joe became a father figure to me, like, and a very important one actually in shaping me too, with discipline and within 6 months, then I like won a Dublin title, a league title, a Leinster title, and All Ireland title, and it was the club's first Irish champion in a few years, I believe. I think Martin Collins was before that, and then Martin after that a good few times as well. So, but we all kind of then, that became a new era in Darndale Boxing Club, where we were the best club in Ireland 3 times, best club in Leinster 7 times, Dublin 10 times, and like we were breaking every club record. It was great, like it was, and we were all kind of in it together. A lot of different Traveller kids and Darndale kids, a lot of the Collinses who I grew up with, great people who I'm good friends with today, just very decent, salt of the earth people. And we all boxed together and helped each other through all the different championships and that. And we all still have that connection because we all grew up together and went through it all together as well, you know. So I gained a lot of confidence then from boxing, as you do, and it's a great thing, and gained a lot of discipline. But you see that insecurity and the chip on my shoulder?
Yeah.
Well, that grew into an ego. And, the bullying, particularly by some of the older Traveller fellas when I was a kid, I never forgot that, And I suppose I always thought bare knuckle. I'm going to be bare knuckle fighting. That's the way, And even though my trainer Joe would always say, don't fight on the street, don't do bare knuckle, blah, 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 you'll get banned, all this. But I thought, no, I've revenge with certain people,
Because of the ego.
Because of the ego, yeah. And leading with pride. Pride is such a big thing, and pride is a thing Travellers talk about too often as a positive thing, and it isn't actually. It's not a positive thing. Pride is the sin, if you like, that has caused me the most amount of distress, because from pride comes fear and shame, So gained a lot of pride, and then I did a bit of a revenge mission of fights, and then there was, like as a child, I was thrown into a Traveller feud when I was only 12, 13, Like, I went to retrieve a shotgun one time in the middle of this feud at 13, and my uncles told me it wasn't loaded, and I was a big John Wayne fan. My grandfather had every John Wayne film ever made, and I used to watch them all. I thought it was John Wayne, So I went in, and I said, hang on. I went in, and I was holding it, and the ERU, the emergency response unit, were outside the trailer. They didn't know I was in there retrieving it. I was only 12 or 13, I think. Maybe 12, 2002, I think. And basically, I just thought, oh, sure, have the gun. I'll play around with it here in the trailer. And there's no bullets in it. So bang. And it blew a hole the size of the hole. The hole was the size of a car, a Nissan Micra, in the trailer. And I was just standing there like that. And deaf and didn't know what to do, and like time slowed down, and then my mother and all my aunts came, and they were roaring, and I couldn't hear them, and the guards took off because they were terrified. They left,
Sure.
and I was like, just didn't know what to do. Anyway, long story short, the guards was out enough time to get the gun to throw it over the wall to other people who were retrieving it the other side, adults that sent me. Wasn't the greatest of influencers either, these fellas. But loved them all and all the same. So I remember going back to me grandmother's house then in Darndale across the way, Margarita, and my grandfather Johnny, and I stayed with them for a week because it was just so unfair, like, and I was shaking, And then there were other instances of getting chased down the road as a child, and I got Bell's palsy twice, which is like a facial stroke. I still have a bit of it now. When I laugh, you notice it sometimes on my left eye,
Was that just through stress or?
Stress, you get it from immediate stress.
Right.
So I got it for that. I got it 3 times actually, but twice during kind of feudal times, let's say. The feudal times. So there was a lot of that going on, and then bare knuckle fighting and all that and stuff. And that fed the ego as well, because I was good at boxing and I was good at the bare knuckle, and I was, I won titles and Irish titles, 4 Nation goals, it was a big sense of pride, and the kind of insecurity of being Irish too. I won a 4 Nation gold medal against an Englishman who said, I'm going to knock you out, you paddy, and that was a great sense of pride, and I brought home the medal and the videotape, the DVD. My brother said, you should have been fighting for Great Britain when he saw it. And I was up in the podium with the Irish national anthem and all, real proud, So again, silly thing like that, you know, always insecure about the Irish identity as well. So
Yeah.
pride in my Irishness, pride in being a traveller, pride in being a fighter. These are the things that really were very destructive for me, you know, and fed the ego in a big, big way. And I became a bragger then about the fighting as well, then a bragger, you know, and I would jump to a fight very easy then. I would never bully because I wasn't the bully. But if someone opened the door to a fight, bam, I was straight in, you know, and often felt bad and guilty afterwards because I knew it was wrong as well. I knew it. And
So just kind of to stop you there then. So you went from this disciplined life of the boxing and everything, and then obviously you say the pride get in the way, and then you're out your street fighting and everything. So was there ever any like faith? So this in the beginning, you know, how did faith come into things? Did you grow up in a faithful household? Did your parents have faith? What did that look like?
yeah, they did. I'd be able to talk more about my mother because I wouldn't have known that side of my father too much. I just have a very specific experience of him because I only had him till 8.
Yeah.
I know he definitely had faith. His mother and father are very strong in faith. And his brother and sister is very strong in faith. My mother, for sure, as well. But she wouldn't have been a mass goer a lot. She'd go through bouts of going to mass. And I would go to mass with her sometimes, go to mass with my granny, Chrissy, sometimes throughout my childhood and teens, on and off. But always said prayers at night, always. Like the prayer, the prayer that kind of has played a big part in my life is Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, you know. As I lay on my bed to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I give the Lord my soul to take. Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, bless the bed that I lay on. There is 4 corners at my bed. There is 4 angels at my head. My mother learned us that prayer. Now she learned us the Our Father, Hail Mary, and that was like the prayer schedule every night, Our Father, Hail Mary, and that. But that's the prayer that get me the comfort, you know. There is 4 corners at my bed. There is 4 angels at my head.
Yeah.
Because I suppose I lived a life of never actually feeling peace, ever. I always had an inner war going on from childhood. There was an anxiousness. And from what was going on, and me poor father and all that, and probably feeling all that energy and not quite knowing what it was. And then that carried on throughout my teens as well, you know, because even though the ego became a lot bigger, my self-esteem was so low still, because I was still that child who was bullied and lost a father and had to prove stuff and I'm a man and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, and I've only realised this recently, when that all became uncontrollable at around 17, there was a series of events that shaped that. But one of the things was I stopped praying at that time. I stopped praying and I became more pessimistic. And I stopped going to mass, which I went intermittently with my grandmother, Chrissy. So to me now, that's no coincidence. Now knowing now the power of praying and the power of mass, I know now that played a part in it. That opened me up to the darkness. And when I was 17, few different things happened, but the boxing was going well, and then I stopped training as much as I did, 16. And didn't do the long training camps I did. Got arrogant. I went in and lost a fight against someone who I beat previously. Actually, it was a self-destructive thing. I was beating him by 13 points and getting my count. But I beat him with 3 seconds left. 13 points up. Self-destruction, you know. Another fella beat me then in an All-Ireland that I was expecting to blow out, and I told everybody I would blow out. But I lost 4 stone in 8 weeks or something for the fight, and it didn't take it serious. I was losing discipline. I was getting cocky and getting arrogant, and I was street fighting a lot. And then I got involved in crime, which gave me, you know, they talk about karma, you know, and I know karma is his own religion, but that idea of when you do bad and bad will come back at you, trust me, that is so true. That is so true. Because when I started to get involved in crime around the area, my boxing career, bad luck, robbery, disqualification, loss of discipline, depression kicking in, all that stuff. And then my mother got engaged to this man who ended up moving in with us in Darndale in a house. And And he was an Englishman, born and reared an Englishman, but Irish parents, and had that same chip in his shoulder about the Irishness. And in Mother's Day 2007, I woke up and looked at my mother's bed, went in to give her a present, and there was blood all over her bed. And I rang her. And I told her to come down to the house, and where were you? And she was up with her sister. And something was wrong. And I said, what's the story with the blood? She said, don't be panicking, don't get angry. And I knew then. Because she knew what my temper was like. And my brother, brother Joe, my other brother was only a child that time, Packy. So she came down and she walked into the house with her sister, and she was deformed. Her face was deformed, blood everywhere. She had lumps on her head, size of eggs, and he did it. He threw her down the stairs when they were coming home from the pub, then threw her in a puddle and danced on her in a puddle, and then came back to the house with her. We didn't know. We were in the other beds. Yeah. So that was one of those moments of, it almost felt like demonic possession, to be honest. The rage. And even now I'm angry, when you think about it. Especially knowing what my mother had to endure her whole life. She suffered a lot, So I'm going to skip a lot of the details, but anyway, we bet him to the point where he was very bad, basically. Very, very bad. And that inability to protect my mother, who protected us, that seemed like the very basic obligation I had as a son, was to protect my mother. So when I wasn't able to protect her, that really made me very cynical about the world, and there would have been a lot of, as well, I remember there would have been a lot of like damning God as well, oh God, why would you, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. I remember that, like. And I got kind of more into the crime. This is, up till 17, and then my mother found out I was involved in crime. She didn't know, and very simply sat down with me and was crying. And it just reminded me of, the crying that I would have heard growing up, from her when my father died. And she didn't want us going down the wrong road. And she asked me to stop. And I said, yeah, and I stopped. That was it. Never did it again. But the kind of after effect of that was an immense sense of guilt and shame, and now where am I, and what did I do, and all this stuff.
Knowing that you'd hurt your mummy?
Hurt people, hurt her, hurt everything, and I went down the wrong road because I thought my life had potential. I thought I was going to do something, whether that be a professional boxer, which I always thought, or do something a bit different, but I lost track of who I was, and I led with the ego, and I led with pride, and I got burned, and that's just the reality, and I take full responsibility as well. So I had about 18 months of just real darkness where I gained 8 stone, and I nearly just ate myself to death. Gluttony, a big problem in my life, gluttony, a reoccurring theme. And about 18 months into it, I just couldn't go on no more, and I wanted to kill myself, but I didn't want to do that to my mother after what happened to her, and that cry of her after my father died, I heard that cry over and over. But at a certain point I was losing my mind, and I was in the room in Darndale, in the box room, and I decided to kill myself. And the second I did, knock, knock, my brother Joe walked into the door, and he said, "Are you going to kill yourself?" And I said, "No," but I gave him an indication I was. And he said, "Man, please don't kill yourself, because we can't afford to bury you." Yeah. And that was a genuine thing of shame, you know.
Yeah.
I've no doubt that's a God intervention, no doubt. You know, like my father from the grave, along the way, you know, I was involved in a moment one time in a feud where I was getting chased with someone with a weapon, and this was life or death, like life or death any second, and he was just right behind me. And I said, Daddy, please help me. And I don't know why I said it, because I never talked to me, Daddy. I never talked to him or prayed about him even, or nothing like. But in that moment, your man lost his weapon and slipped, and I got away alive. These are the little God crumbs that are actually throughout my life, you know? But I still ran away from God. So my brother Joe suggested that I start acting. Now, what I didn't tell you was this. I actually acted when I was 16. I did an acting course in my FOSS where I dropped out of school and joined a metalwork course because I was meant to be a man, and I hated it. And I just played ping pong every day, right? With the ping pong there. Every time you see me, John's over there with the ping pong. I was just playing ping pong, yeah? Because I was terrible at metalwork. I was okay at welding. That was the only thing I was okay at. So this French-Canadian clown and his Canadian wife, two actors, came in to teach an acting class, and were looking for people to volunteer for the class. And I just said, yeah, to get out of the class. So we went up, and I remember doing an improvisation with my friend John Walsh. My friend John Walsh is like my oldest friend, you know, my first settled friend as well, really, outside of school, who crossed the line, so to speak. A lot of his settled friends wouldn't play football with us, but John would, and then they all did, and we all started playing football together, you know. And John would be one of the best, if not the best, footballer Kulak has ever seen, goal scorer anyway. He'd probably correct me and say the absolute best, and definitely the best, because he's arrogant and cocky, which is why we love John, because he's so funny. Because travellers kind of find arrogance funny, you know. It's why me and Joe are his groomsmen in his wedding next year. Only me, him, and Dillaz, his only friend. I'm burning him there a bit, but he won't mind. So I went to that acting course. Me and John did an improvisation, and I'll never forget it. He was playing a boxing trainer, and I was playing a boxer, you know, leading into my strengths. I wasn't stretching myself there anyway. But we got so much encouragement from the two teachers and the rest of the class. It was like some buzz.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, I'm good at something other than boxing, like, you know, or sports, because I always kind of excelled at sports. So that was amazing. It was 6 weeks of that. But what happened was, and this is very weird, the course tutor became jealous. The course tutor of the metalwork course, he became jealous because I was so into it. And I think that I was sort of seen as like a popular kid in the place, because I was overdeveloped athletically, and I was a boxer, Irish champion, and I wasn't a shy person. I'm extroverted, you know. So I was kind of, and I think he was a shy kid and was bullied, you know. And he sort of almost was pally with me, but I think he just resented the fact that I liked the acting. I liked it, and I was really passionate about it. And it wasn't like that about the metalwork course, which he was the teacher on, you know. Yeah. And I don't think that. I know that, you know, and I know a lot more now as well. So on the very last week where we're meant to do our performance, he said to me, oh, you can't go up to that. And I says, what? Why? And he said, well, Mary said you can't go. Now, Mary's meant to be this sort of false principal. And I was like, why would Mary not want me to go to this? And how does she even know I'm doing it? And what's the big deal? And he didn't say nothing. So I knew that he was lying, because I could always tell a liar, because I was around a lot of lies and danger in my life from a young age. And he just went red and he blushed because he didn't know what to say. So I ran up to her office and I asked her, why are you not letting me to go to the acting course? I really like it, like, and this is the performance day. And she said, what are you talking about? I don't even know about this. So I went back to him and I said, she said blah, blah, blah. And he didn't know what to say. So I went up to the acting class and I'm midway through my performance. And this is a good thing for people to understand about the power of mentors, tutors, teachers, and also how they can nearly ruin your life. Yeah. So I'm in the middle of the performance. The two of them burst through the door and she said, John, you weren't given permission by him to go up. And I was like, what? And I went red. I got embarrassed. And when I get embarrassed, especially back then when I got embarrassed, I would fill with rage, you know, because it's humiliation, you know. So I left the building and I put my hand through a few of the windows. And the next day, that's when I started my criminal life, the next day. because I was getting tempted constantly by someone I know, an older person I knew, who was constantly asking me, because he's seen I was reasonably intelligent and I was a fighter, so I would have been a bit of an asset to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that devil on my shoulder all the time. And I quit that because I was publicly humiliated. And it's no excuses, but I was only 17 or 16 at that time.
Yeah.
And the next day is when I started committing crime, basically, on the daily. So that could have been the end of the story. That could have been a life of crime. That could have been death early. That could have been life in prison. I could have murdered someone or got murdered.
Yeah.
That's being honest. If it were not for God. Because going back to that box room in Darndale, I say, I'm sorry. I said, I'm sorry, God. I'm going to have to kill myself. And on cue, knock, knock, knock. Joe walks in. Are you going to kill yourself?
Because God had other plans.
God had other plans. Absolutely. So that alone gave me a great buzz, and I signed up to an acting course, and I borrowed money from my brother, my uncle, and even a fiver from my mother for the bus in and out of town. She was just happy to see me leave the house and happy to see me smile. And I went to the class and was surrounded by experienced actors, and I had only done that course, and I was going to quit. I was going to do the ostrich, bury my head in the sand.
Yeah.
And a scene unfolded in front of me between this kind of upper class fella and this Brazilian man who was black. And this upper class fella, for me, there was kind of racial undertones, and I felt it was kind of almost a bully, and I resonated with the Brazilian man, so I volunteered to do an improv with the upper class fella.
Yeah.
And I walked outside the classroom, and you're meant to come in with an idea, and he has to go along with you. So he became a bank clerk, and I came in and I robbed the bank.
Right.
And I slapped him up and took his shoes off him, and halfway taking off his tracksuit bottoms, and when the teacher came in and said, "Stop, John, stop." So I left the classroom, and I was running down the stairs, and she was chasing after me, and she was saying, "John, please come back." And I was like, "Don't call the guards,"
Mm-hmm.
And I was running down Abbey Street, honestly, I was gone, and she said, "Please come back." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, you're crazy, but I like it." She said, "Now don't put your hands on a student again." And I said, "Okay." So I came back, and I got I got a very rambunctious clap.
Didn't know whether to clap or
It
not.
was fair, I think, from the students, and it was this profound sense of expression, catharsis, where I was like, whoa, all of it was gone off my shoulders, and I was on a high, just a high. It was like a drug being on a drug, just high, high, high. You think about creativity, and you think about what it is, you're creating something from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Within itself, that's a religious idea, creation.
Yeah.
So I got a high, and I left that night with a scene that I had 12 weeks to learn, a 10-minute scene, and I got a scene partner to do on stage. And when I was walking down Abbey Street, people were looking at me because I had a weird smile, because I hadn't smiled in about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I went home, and my mother sensed it straight away, and she said, "Something's different about you." And I says, "I joined an acting class, but don't tell anybody, please." And she says, "Son, just please keep going." And that was it, acting, creativity. And I had that scene basically learned by the next week I was there, because I stayed up all night and I Googled how to become a better actor, and learn your lines was number one. I know it's kind of crazy, but a lot of people don't learn their lines. And that was my real entrance into art, I'd say, and because understanding that this was art now, and how I interpreted was art, and expressing it,
Yeah. I know something similar in my life as well, because I said basically art saved me, so it became a lifeline, and I know it became a lifeline for you too, but clearly something was still lacking, because otherwise you would have just stuck with the art. Art would have been enough, but it clearly hasn't been. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, you're totally right. Well, you see, what art brought to me and creativity brought to me was, it brought a great Band-Aid. It gave me a great big hug. It temporarily stopped me from descending into the darkness, you know. It stopped the emergency, you know. But I looked at it as the answer. And my life is said very different. That's when I was 20 years of age that I went to that class, 3 months before my 21st birthday. I finished the course in November 2020. However, when I said yes to that, yes to acting, yes to positivity, yes to creativity, a lot of good things started to happen in my life. And I got casted in a film called King of the Travellers. I wrote another one with the same director, Mark O'Connor, called Stalker, which was Barry Keoghan's first starring role, me and him together. And I did love-hate in between all of that. It was like a special extra role, but I improvised a bit, which led to me getting a bigger role coming back. And so all this was happening because I decided, at least at a very basic level, to think positively and try to live a positive life rather than to think cynically all the time and to follow the darkness. So I chose to follow the light. And in terms of even praying, I would come in and out of praying then, you know, again, and in and out of mass as well. I remember going back to mass a bit with my grandmother that time as well. And yeah, acting was a lifeline, but it wasn't the healer. It wasn't. I got into writing then again, it's cathartic, but I would still find myself back in the darkness. I would still find myself getting depressed. I would still find myself getting very anxious. Going on mad benders, you know, escaping something still, not addressing something still, you know, and the death of my father was something that I was grieving, or not fully actually grieving, all my life, really, you know, up until very recently, and still, like, so yeah, I went on the acting career and ups and downs, and then I would have got involved politically a bit, and Stalker was a film that really woke me up because it was about the homeless crisis, which we thought was at an emergency state back then. That was 2012 when we shot that. Now it's like crazy, the worst homeless crisis since the famine. So that politically opened me up, and I got very involved in politics and really dove deep into it and wanted to know more about politics, you know, and I found that to be very dark.
I was going to say, because we know now that that's a divisive tool. It divides, and it does descend you into a darkness and keeps you conflicted. There's no peace when you follow so much politics because you're always conflicted with something, because I fell into the same pattern too. So how did you get out of that?
Well, there was loads of like years of controversies with me. I'm not if I'm not controversial, apparently. So whatever political moves I made or stances I took, you know, and it blew back at me, or stupid tweet I might have done as well. I did plenty of them, and I take responsibility for being a bit of an idiot on Twitter. I think Twitter brings out the idiot in us all as well.
I'm off it.
And especially then, it was under 140 characters, you know, and I'm there having a pint of Guinness at the local, smoking a fag, throwing a tweet out, and all of a sudden it goes viral for all the wrong reasons, and I'm some sort of hate figure, and I'm going, what was I doing? So there's all of that, you know, and listen, along the way, I think I spoke the truth, and I spoke what I believed along the way as well, but also just made mistakes too, and you know, and then you know, in the middle of it all, I'm having a career and ups and downs, and you know, pride again was a thing that, you know, pride would often get me in my trouble, you know. Pride, because that brought a sense of insecurity, and I wanted to show who I was, and that's what led a lot of the political stuff too, you know. I'll tell you.
Yeah, what I'm saying there is, whenever we both pray Bishop Barnes' rosary, and he talks about the ego drama and the theo drama, what I'm saying there is a life full of the ego drama, where your self gratification is about you, your needs, your wants. You're going to say and do what you like without thinking of the ramifications of that. But then whenever you start following the theo drama and you're not in control, something higher is control, that's the shift. So when did that shift happen, or was it over a period of things?
Yeah, that'd be well later, but I mean, that time, you're totally right, because when you don't have God at the center of your life, you are God. Whether you're conscious of that or not, or you're saying it explicitly or knowing it, You are God if you don't have a higher power, because you lead with ego. And it doesn't even mean you have a big outwardly ego, but and I didn't, I think, but I definitely had a big inner ego, and I at least had a bit of awareness, not to put it so outward, but that made it even more destructive in a way. You know, I had a lot of pride in me. I want to show them how smart I am. I want to show them how brave I am. I want to show all these people who I want approval of and want to be a part of their club that I'm good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was leading with the ego, leading with pride. So I evolved in too many things and getting clouded and this, that, and the other. But at the meantime, still doing a lot of acting, which was helping me. And then I did certain moves politically, but then certain moves artistically. Like I made a film called Cardboard Gangsters, and it was like written from experiences I had growing up, and not biographical, semi-biographical. And, you know, I took approaches that would have really damaged my mental health, Danielle. You know, like, for instance, the scene where I get killed in the end of that, and the scene where I kill Sean, Dara's son, is the scene where my father killed himself.
Okay.
And I did that because I was getting really deep into the method idea, and that was pride too, you know. And also maybe a laziness of like, I know I'll get to a place emotionally, I won't have to act, and that is good in a way. And sometimes
But
it's an act,
destructive.
but it's very destructive. It really is. Like, and I remember being like in that hole for hours after I got through in the hole, and I lost consciousness in and out because I was getting choked by the actor Jimmy, who went really deep, you know, and which is what I wanted. And I taunted the other actors in the scene, my friend Clinchy, my friend Damien Dempsey, and Patsy, to go hard on me, and I was taunting them and doing the whole method thing. And I remember losing consciousness, coming in and out, and I couldn't give like a sign. And then I got through in the hole, and I was in the hole. That was a dark place to be in psychologically, that hole. I was there for a long time that day, and I had bruises on my neck for weeks afterwards. I had to get makeup and all. I remember that having like a very dark, destructive feeling and stranglehold on me for a long time after that film. I went on a lot of benders after that film for months afterwards. Like, and when you go on these benders, that's the further away from God you go. You go more towards the devil. Like, that's just a fact. So your mental health, you're just recovering from a bender, and then bang, again, and then it becomes habitual, you know. And I was always good at going on and off benders and going actually months without it as well.
Yeah.
But it's just, when I did, I was all the way. I was all in.
Okay.
You know, my mother used to say that, you know, I had a mind like the wind, but also that I was all or nothing, you know, and all or nothing can be
coming
good.
up.
All or nothing can be good in the right direction, but the way I was doing it, famine or feast, you know, a 3-day bender and then a 3-day fast afterwards. I did that so many times. My mother used to think I was mental, you know, which I clearly am, like, in a way, you know. I clearly have problems, or I wouldn't be here. This is like an episode of Oprah Winfrey. But that film did make me go into the darkness. And then there was political stuff and stuff I was involved in, and controversies, and I did a one-man show then, Ireland's Call, which I wrote in 2 nights, really. I wrote a 2-hour show, but just because it was the deadline, I had about 5 months to write it. And I wrote it in 2 nights. And I wrote it while I was watching The Sopranos, drinking wine, eating lasagna, texting it into my phone as a monologue in 2 nights. I wrote it the first night, enough for a one-man show, an hour, and then I went, I'll do it again the next night. And then I just sent it to them like this dribble. And but what I didn't know was it was a story about my father. It was all about him. It was all about his ghost, which was always in my life. You know, it's mad. I didn't know what it was about. Imagine Danielle even opening night. I still didn't realise. I didn't realise it opened night. This is all about my father. The story was all about my father. It came out, and I was 28 years of age then, and it was still following me.
Yeah.
You know, the ghost of me past and the things I didn't deal with. And again, with faith, I wouldn't have went to church around this time. In and out of prayers whenever I remembered. You know, really.
So then, because you did come into the light, was there a rock bottom? They always say before you find God or peace, we all hit a rock bottom. And I know personally, in my experience, I did. But for you, was there a rock bottom?
There were loads.
But was there one last, like, before you really could see a sort of a truth? Because I know for me, it was a big moment, and was there a big moment for you, or Or is
Yeah,
it?
it's well ahead still.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. That's like when I'm 28, you know. Again, you have rock bottoms and you tell yourself this is rock bottom. You know how many times I had to deal with God, I beg of you, save me from this situation, and I'll turn into a priest. Yeah, honestly, like literally saying that, I'll give my life to you. Yeah, just saying, like whatever it may be, another bender full of anxiety, full of depression, and going, God, please save me, and then you're back there again a few weeks later.
It shows you how good he is then.
You know, it does absolutely to forgive me of all this lies, but I wasn't in my right mind either, and intoxicated too. But I mean, that's the reality for a lot of young men now as well. The reality a lot, these weekend benders and then recovering and all that stuff, and the darkness and using it as medication. That is the reality. And do you know how many fellas I spoke to who made that deal with God as well? That's a common thing, because we all know internally, we all know deep down that he's there actually. We run away from them because we don't want to be faced with the truth. The truth is all this stuff is actually bad for you.
Healing.
And but he heals exactly. But all this stuff you're being led by matters of the flesh, you know.
But the thing is, he only heals you when you face everything you've been running away from. So that, yes, is hard for us all, because you have to go to the dark places that you've been avoiding your whole life.
Yeah.
So tell us.
So 2020 was the beginning of the end in a way. 2020 was COVID. Did you ever hear that there was a virus?
I don't remember. I don't think I was here.
Let's call it Schmovid or whatever. So that was my worst nightmare, Danielle. Someone with anxiety, who, let's just say, had an up and down mental health life, and I was very concerned about my mother, because my mother, a heavy smoker, always had a cough, and she was overweight at the time, and I was overweight and smoking as well, very overweight and smoking a lot. I smoked more than her, and that year was a funny year because it was 2020, and I just turned 30. Now, I always had this self-fulfilling prophecy I was going to die before 31 because my father did. I was convinced of it my whole life, never told anybody, but just convinced of it. You're never going to make it to 31. So when that January 5th hit in 2020, I was convinced I'm going to die this year. Yeah? Weird thing. And COVID hit in March. We had a documentary out called Endless Sunshine on a Cloudy Day. Myself and Tiernan, my best friend I've ever had in my life, to be honest with you. The lightest friend I ever had. And we had a documentary about Jade McCann and her father. And that documentary followed both of them to the grave. They both died of cancer. That was a big spiritual plot point. We didn't want to follow them to the grave, but they asked us to, because it was giving them purpose. And I was deeply conflicted, and so was Tiernan. And Tiernan would debrief them all the time, because Tiernan is an integrative psychotherapist. Yeah. And he would debrief me too. Thank God for Tiernan. Thank God for Tiernan in so many ways. But when we were editing that, right, we were putting in a shot that Jay didn't want, which was a shot about her own vanity. Okay. Right? It was because she had like a makeup blemish or whatever, a tan blemish. Okay. But no matter what we did in that edit, that would not go through. It wouldn't go in. Wouldn't go in. And we kept getting signs, and the electric even went off, and lights went on and off. And we're like, what the? Tiernan's going, John. And the night I was up and doing Ireland's Call in Belfast. It was one of the performances you've seen. And I had a dream of Jade. And she came to me in the dream and was smiling at me. Just smiling at me. And when I woke up to a text from Tiernan saying she passed away during the night. You know? So Jade and the stuff around her was a big part of this for me. Opening back up to God and going, what's going on? I can't explain this stuff. You know? So in that edit, loads of freaky things happened. Loads. And Tiernan, who was an integrative psychotherapist, a cognitive scientist, an academic, not a believer, and would have believed that religion are man-made structures, used for people to understand life and to get through life and whatnot. And some other people would think it's more conspiratorial than that. So he started getting very curious, and he said, why don't we do a paranormal show where you're the believer, I'm the skeptical? Because I would have still had that belief, but not a strong religious belief. And I would have seen Jesus as someone who probably lived, but I don't know if he was the son of God. I actually just don't know. You know, that's the way I would have been. but he seemed like a really good person. But there is a creator of the universe, new agey, almost paganistic. If someone said, are you pagan? I would have said, yeah, because I would and I wouldn't have known much about it, but I would have said, yeah, because it sounded like it's cool and attached to Irish culture, which is what I would have thought, not knowing that Irish culture is built on Christian values, really. Yeah. So that's where I was at, but definitely believing in the other, because of all the experiences I had spiritually. So believing that there's something going on in a frequency that we're unaware of as human beings. So I said yes to that. And we did that show, and that show was called Sleeping with the Entity. Okay. And we got 5 different groups of celebrities that would stay in a famous haunted house location castle in Ireland. Okay. So Tiernan the Skeptic and we're presenting the show. First night is in Ardgillan Castle, where there's the lady of the stairs, the Baroness, who drowned there in the beach in front of the castle. 107 years ago, and has been spotted hundreds of times, if not thousands of times since. So many reports for, right? Obviously, Tiernan thinks this is just people imagining things and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, he probably did, So that's where I was, lukewarm, He was like, let's deconstruct this silliness, but not in an arrogant way. That's just not Tiernan's way, but an understandable atheistic perspective, So, Casper Walsh, the versatile rapper, and Dubzino, the rapper, they were together. And we went down to the lady in the stairs where she gets spotted at night time and walked down. And as we were walking down, Casper Walsh spots the lady in the stairs. And he took off running and ran back up the stairs and started shouting. And we caught it all on camera. So we ran down towards the stairs. And I forgot to mention that we're using all this state-of-the-art paranormal technology that picks up frequencies, thermal energy, voices coming through. Okay? This is all verified scientifically. Tiernan is a scientist, so he was entirely happy with it. Yeah. Anybody can look into this equipment. And at the time when it was released, the whole show, I challenge any journalist who wants to look at the files, the raw files, uncorrupted, for themselves, if they think that we're playing with them, okay? Because I want people to see and understand that there's stuff going on that we don't know about. So Casper ran back up that hill, but we ran down the hill. And when we got to that stairs, we got the lady of the stairs, the Baroness, on a thermal camera, her whole shape as a woman. On camera. Our cameraman, even one of our cameramen said, I'm not going to say it, but because he couldn't help it, it was an involuntary response. Yeah. And it was a mad experience. Then we went back inside in the castle and played the Ouija board. Now, I didn't play it because my mother begged me to not play it. She said, don't play that Ouija board, not hours because I had an experience with it in my house before when my brother and cousins played it. And all the windows blew open in the house like not smashed, but came out. And the door came in and I had to bring them over to a priest and bless the house. That's what happened one night. Yeah. It was the weirdest thing ever happened and a wind came up the stairs. So I wouldn't play it, but I was watching it and we're commenting as it's watching and loads of freaky stuff and people who lived in the castle came through on the Ouija board. So we put them there to sleep there, but again, they start getting touched and felt getting touched and all. So they left and they wouldn't sleep in the place, Casper or Dubzino. Now, as a result of that episode, Casper went and became a born-again Christian and is so deep into his faith now. He found God and found healing. That's how serious it was for him. Dubzino was kind of already a believer, The next episode was in Wicklow Jail with a girl called Ava Von Rose and a fella called Michael Byrne, and both sort of influencers. And we had the same equipment and all that stuff. And we landed in Wicklow Jail and so many voices came through. Irish voices screaming and talking about Michael the Archangel and biblical references and please help me, I'm Irish and all this. And then darker voices coming in that were scaring us and saying, I'll kill you and all this, right? And we're going, what the? And we're getting them constantly in the thermal camera. We're getting them on the stickman camera, I called it because I don't know a lot about science, but they take the form of a stickman or woman,
Yeah.
And we're picking them up constantly and the energy's mad in the place. And our cameraman gets touched in the cell that we were told you will be touched by the person running the place. Someone's going to be touched. And the cameraman, who's an atheist, gets touched. And the camera shakes. And again, all these people in the crew all go back to faith after us. All of them. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So we're in there and then Ava is having these sort of prophetic powers and is saying things that we don't really know the full history of the place until afterwards. In the edit, we realise she's actually communicating with a lot of dark stuff, and so much darkness came through in Wicklow Jail. It was very, very scary, and things dropping and falling, and it was crazy, like, to be honest. So that happens, and then the next night we go to another haunted place, haunted castle. Again, loads of other stuff comes through, loads of other stuff. And then we go to the Hellfire Club. And the Hellfire Club was the Talking Bollocks lads, the two Talking Bollocks podcasters.
Oh, yeah.
Deacon Mon, Terence and Calvin, and these land outside the Hellfire Club and meet us there. And they're like, listen, we're men of science. We don't believe in any of this. This is a load of bollocks, but we'll come along for the crack and whatever, John. Nice to meet you, blah, 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 blah. Right? But we'd known already, the nights we've already been there, like we'd put cat balls out that only go off if someone touches them, and they're going on and off every episode and constantly, like disco lights. So anyhow, we knew that we were going to, if anywhere we're going to pick up something, if we picked it up in the other place, we're going to pick it up in the Hellfire Club. We knew by then, and it was a scary feel. So anyway, we're 10 minutes there, and not only did the disco lights go off like disco balls, a ball got hurled across the room from a demonic force towards me. Mm-hmm. Maybe because I was the most fearful. We caught this on camera. This is on camera. And the lads ran out and they refused to stay in the place, but we went back in. And loads of voices coming through talking about me, talking about Tiernan, talking about Peter, our sound guy, talking about all the people who originally built the Hellfire Club, the founders, the military gentlemen, talking about the Killikee cat, which was a demonic cat that haunted the place, and telling us, get out, the cat is in, the cat is in, the cat is in. Right?
Right.
Which leads me to something that we found in the edit. We found a demonic cat in the edit. Post-show, after already editing it, taking a demonic form. We have it. We have the footage, and I will show people this. Okay? Mm-hmm. I almost feel it's unlucky to show people this. By the way, we funded this show by ourselves, and we never made 1 cent. I think selling the whole thing, we sold it online on morph.tv. Selling the whole thing, I think we got a couple of €100. We never got an hour's look. And we funded it out of our own pocket, left ourselves broke funding this, by the way.
Yeah.
So we go out and leave the Hellfire Club again. Then we go back in the third time. And when we go back in the third time, a voice came through the voice box saying they were my father, speaking in a traveller accent, using a bit of the traveller tongue. And then different traveller voices coming through. And it freaked me out really bad. Like, freaked me out. Because I felt like it wasn't my father, but it was something manipulating, becoming my father.
Yeah.
And I left. I just walked out, not even afraid, just like disgusted. Mm-hmm. So we left the Hellfire Club, and the next night we went to Wexford Castle. Where children are always heard, and apparently children died there. And in Wexford Castle, we caught stick children crawling up and down Tiernan's arm. But a voice kept coming through with sexualized language, right, and violence. And it was Lilith. We were like, Lilith? Who's Lilith? Do you know who Lilith is? Lilith is Lilith the Whip. Lilith the Whip was the second wife of Adam. Lilith the Whip murdered her own children. Right? Lilith the Whip is a biblical figure, a fallen angel. Okay? So she came through. We did all the research on it. And what we figured out was, and this sounds crazy, people have to watch the show to believe it, like. One of her powers is she pretends to be people close to you from the dead to bring you in. But that means she would have been there the night before with us in the Hellfire Club. Mm-hmm. Why was she there? How? How do you think? One of the contestants, even 2 nights before, Ava Von Rose, told us that she gave her soul to Lilith the Whip.
What?
3 months before the show started. But we didn't know until we were editing the show a year later. And we didn't get to edit the show a year later for a different reason, I'll tell you that. So she gave her soul to Lilith the Whip, right? And Lilith the Whip followed us in that show.
People will think we're nuts, by the way.
They can watch the show. But people who think that I'm a religious nut, right, have the experience I had of being contacted by your father and mother beyond the grave. Mm-hmm. God intervening in your life, as I said at the start of this episode, and actually being faced and confronted with demonic forces, right? and then tell me I'm a religious nut. What would Patsy say? A religious fruit.
Or
Not a nut.
Patsy.
Patsy, Curcio Patsy. So I got out of that, and I didn't know where my head was at, but it was a very bad place, Danielle. Very
Could
bad.
imagine.
Right? Now, before all that, I did the Black Wealth, the film where I confronted a lot of trauma in the Black Wealth, and that did well, and blah, 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 and whatever. And that was about intergenerational trauma deriving from clerical abuse. You saw it, and what it was about. And so I'm dealing with all these things, and the Black Wealth is dealing with that as well, dealing with the trauma of that. And the sort of comeback I made in 2020, because making the Black Wealth was a response to my mental health crisis and breakdown, and being on that suicide thing as well after everything that happened in 2020 with me. Sleeping the Entity came out, and it just kept ascending into darker places artistically, but it was all bringing me to light. It just took a long, long time, and it goes even darker, I suppose. So we couldn't get in and start editing that because my mother, got sick. My grandfather, Paddy Ward, he died in 2019 of cancer, and that was a bad way to go, and he was, again, that was a big loss in my life because he was such a strong father figure, and it was almost like your father dying twice. Do you know what I mean? And my mother was really struck by that grief. She was so close to her father. They all are, like, they loved their father, like, loved him so much because he was such a great man, So my mother was carrying a lot of grief with her, and then she got sick after I'd done that show. And one of the things that came up in that show was cancer. John, cancer. So messed up. Don't know what it is. I don't even know what that is. But she was sick and she started to lose weight, and we didn't know for a while. Like, we didn't know what was going on, but we knew she was hiding something. She couldn't eat, and she kept losing weight, and then it was just a matter of we all had to get together, and between me and my brothers and her sisters and brothers, and all met her go to the hospital. But they kept telling her she had GERD, and her doctor, her GP, kept telling her she had GERD, and I was emailing her. I have all the emails. There's no way she's GERD. She's had to losing so much weight. She can't even swallow. She can't eat nothing. She can't eat. And this is months and months, Danielle, of this, like, and we knew she was sick. She wasn't well, and she had pain. But again, this is the HSE for you. Honestly, it's a death sentence, the HSE. So eventually, she got diagnosed with cancer. We already knew she had cancer. I knew she had cancer. She knew it. Everybody knew it. By the time she got diagnosed, she was already about 5 or 6 stone down. Different looking human being. And she was, like, still strong in her faith, like, and when even obviously stronger as you naturally would as a human being there, I wasn't. I had a lot of anger towards God, and because I saw, like, I'd love to say that she died peacefully. Mm-hmm. She didn't. She was very strong in her death and gave us a good death in regards to thinking about us, which she shouldn't have been, which was, thing of, I don't want her to think about us, I want her to think about herself. Again, my mother put everybody else before herself her whole life. But she suffered. She really, really suffered, Danielle. Really bad. And very, very traumatizing for her and all the family as well. Me and my brothers, her brothers and sisters, everybody. Her poor mother, imagine, her mother, Chrissy, what she did.
Your daughter. Yeah.
What she did endure her daughter, like, you know what I mean? And I haven't seen it with her father, Cancer is such a wicked, wicked disease. It also took me grandmother Margarita in the end as well, so we all banded together and looked after the mother, me and the brothers and her brothers and sisters and her mother and everybody, as we did with Big Daddy as well, and you try to give them as much dignity as possible, and loads of mad moments along the way, but my mother, she refused to go to hospital because even, like, not too long before she died, we called an ambulance because we were worried, and then she just said, no, I wouldn't go. And I remember she went into a coma, and this happens because it happened when my grandfather come out of the coma, and you think they're back to life. It's like a last lease of life, And I just remember coming out just for a second while she was in it for 2 days, and she kissed me and said, I love you. And then that was the last time we spoke. But the night she died, we all slept in with her, you know, and I was staying in with her anyway because I moved from Lough. Obviously, I being single and not having children and that, you know, I was able to, and, you know, decided not to take any work for a while. So I was privileged enough to be able to do that, stay with her, and my brothers rotated as well and all that, and family members as well. Everybody was great. All the family came together, but she, that night then, I stayed in the bed with her because I was just worried about her. And we watched the John Wayne film. She loved John Wayne. And I remember Janice, my sister-in-law, she woke me up as my mother was taking her last breath. And she just took a last gasp. And all the family came in, all her brothers and sisters and mother and everybody, and we just put on our tunes. We put on Patsy Cline and Maniac 2000 and all that mad tunes. Yeah. So a few hours of that, and then we brought her on, and we gave her a great send off. But when she passed, it went really dark. Then, you know, that's when it hit me. You know, there was a lot of tension and drama around the family.
Yeah.
And it was very stressful, like, to be honest. And as this kind of just what happens when people die.
Yeah.
It happened with my grandfather too, you know. And the camp was not the same, you know. The place just wasn't the same, and it still isn't now, you know. It's just not. It's not the same. It wasn't the same when my grandfather died, and then especially then when my mother died. So I was looking at any excuse to run away, Danielle, you know, any excuse at all, and so I was doing a lot of drinking and going on benders, and just didn't really care if I lived or died. That's being honest. And then I threw myself back into work, and I did I edited Sleeping with the Entity with Tiernan, and which was great in itself because you're with, you know, your best friend for a good while, living with him as well. And, but he's also a therapist, you know.
He's a positive influence and
Such a
always has
positive
been in your life.
influence, yeah.
I'd say he's a god. He's one of the god seeds because he always seems to pull you back. He's such a good friend, and I can.
And before that, he took me off the ledge. Before that, anyway, all other stuff I covered in other interviews. But so we did that together and actually had fun. But what kept happening was everywhere I went, lights went on and off. Everywhere I went.
I know.
And you've seen this, Danielle, with me all the time.
All the time.
Lights are going on and off, and it was my mother. And I have so many videos of it, which I'll show people and share. And so lights were going on and off, and Tiernan was like, John, that's your mother, like, you know. And Tiernan by this point now had, you know, gotten a cross around his neck.
Yeah.
Someone who didn't believe at all. And so the lights on and off everywhere, and I was like, my mother's giving me signs everywhere I go, and I was crying, and the lights were going off, and she was giving me signs that she was there, you know. So that was coming back into my life, and I start remembering the prayers that she taught me, and I just, obviously there's the Our Father, Hail Mary, but I start saying Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. And I started to feel a bit better, you know, and Tiernan dragged me out of like a bad bender and literally demanded that I go along with his plan, which was start training with him every day, him and his group. And I did that for about 6 weeks, and that got me out of such a hole. He saved me again, you know. But then I fell again because I was getting closer to God, and I was praying, and I was seeing it doing so much good, but I kept going back to the grief, you know. And I did the film with Jim Sheridan and David Merriman, and that's out tomorrow, the premiere. And I used a lot of my own trauma with my mother in that, and that was both cathartic and damaging, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that all led me on the path back towards the light. But you know, when you're getting there and you know you're nearly there, when you fall, then it's so hard to pick yourself up because you know how wrong it is. You know how wrong you're being, and you know how bad it is for you.
Yeah.
So I had seen something that planted a seed in me, and there was a few things that happened, but I went and did a confession. Okay, I walked into a church for one of the feasts of one of the saints, I forget, and when I walked in, this group of women were doing a rosary in this beautiful church in Donabate, and I just remember feeling peace when I walked into the church and hearing the rosary, and I joined in a bit and didn't fully know the structure of the rosary, you know, And the woman who led the role, she came over to me and just put her hand on me and said, "Are you all right, son?"
Mm.
And I went, yeah. She said, "You're not." She said, "There's a particular priest here today. He's a very special priest, I would say. He's from Africa. He's over and he's actually doing a bit of a tour.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing it in the confessional box. And I think you should go to confession. I think it'd be good for you." And I just instinctively said, "Nah." And she said, "Reconsider that. Just wait." So I gave it a few minutes and I went in and I gave a confession. I didn't even know the act of contrition, it was that, but he didn't mind. And I confessed everything since my last confession, which was my first confession as a child. That was a lot to confess.
Here's the thing as well with confession, because I truly believe in the power of confession and the sacraments, but so much so the confession, because it does take the weight of the world off your shoulders. You're not having to deal with these things, and truly God is present. It's not the priest that we're going to. God's there and he's listening and he meets us there and he forgives us. With that being said, did you feel that weight lift? Did you feel different?
Yeah. So I said everything, and then the things that actually were bothering me more than anything was whenever I wasn't perfect as a son. Now, Danielle, I'll say this to be actually decent to myself. By anybody's standard, I was a good son, because I had a great mother. Me and my brothers were good sons. It's just the reality. But when you're beating yourself up and you're feeling down and you're riddled with trauma and grief, you lean into the badness. And I thought of the times I let her down, which were generally true, making her worry, because I was gone on a bender or whatever dangerous stuff I did years ago, So I thought of them and I leaned into them instead of the times I was there for, which was most of the time.
Yeah.
But was it perfect? No, but it was a decent, yeah. So I let the priest know all that. And the priest started laughing. Yeah. And he says, "Is that all?" Right? And I went, and he just said, "Listen, I've heard way worse than that." And he made me laugh,
Yeah.
And he said, "You're punishing your mother right now. Your mother's beside you now listening to you, and you're punishing her because you won't let this go." And he absolved me from my sins, gave me prayers to say, and I walked out buzzing.
Nothing like it.
And start going to church, an odd mass, but church by itself, lighting candles, an odd mass, right? And not fully feeling the mass.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an odd mass. And one day I went on another bender, and because I became so aware of how bad it was for me and I was on the spiritual path.
Yeah.
And this time you were sending me lots of stuff and stuff around Sister Claire that was really giving meaning, and they felt like God incidents, God crumbs as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did a bender, 3-day escaping bender again, where you get confronted with all that darkness, I really beat myself up then after that, and I felt ashamed again and guilty, and I felt like I was letting my mother down, About a year before, I watched a video with Jonathan Rumi talking about his surrender to Jesus, when he surrendered to Jesus. That planted a seed.
Mm-hmm.
So I got down on my 2 knees, bended, and I just said, "Lord Jesus, I beg of you, guide me down the right path." And it was because I was not in my right mind at the time, still drunk. I said, "If not, just take me off the map, please, because I haven't got the balls to do it myself. Just let me die in my sleep or something. But if you're willing to save me and save me from my own self-destruction, I'll never deny you, and I'll glorify you whenever I get an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And please just bring me peace, because I never had peace in my whole life. I never had peace. No matter how well I was doing successfully, artistically, and all these different things, I never had peace. I always had an anxiousness. And I walked straight down to the graveyard in a heap, crying to see my mother. And I told my mother, I said, "I'm at the swearing to Jesus and I'm going to change. And honestly, I'm going to change. And this time, I know I said it before, but I'm not." And from that moment, now, that was the last time I had a drink. Last time I smoked, and I was a smoke addict.
Mm-hmm.
I started praying twice daily then, giving thanks in the morning and surrendering my day. And then praying at night and going to Mass more and appreciating Mass more. But then there were loads more stuff along the way, but I'll just tell you the big one here, which was, me and you are developing this spiritual relationship too together, and all the stuff you're sending me is like, and I feel like God is bringing us together. I genuinely do, said this. And then I had something going on in the family, and I asked Jesus to solve it, and he did. And then selfishly, another thing went on in the family that looked unresolvable, and I went to knock because a voice told me to go to knock. Just something said, go to knock, go to knock. So I went to knock, and the last time I was in knock, I was afraid to go to knock because the last time I was there with my mother.
Yeah.
And my mother was nearly dead when she was in knock, in the Basilica, where we listened to Our Lady of Knock. And actually it was a place of trauma, but when I went there, I got peace immediately. And I got the Mass, but I got halfway through the Mass, and they were just handing out the Holy Eucharist, the body of Christ. And I lined up. And as I lined up, I saw someone getting down on their knees to receive the Eucharist, on their tongue, of course. And I said, do that. Something in me said, do that. Get down on your knees, receive it like that, on your tongue. And then another voice came in and said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't be subservient to a priest, this ego and pride, and actually not seeing what it was about. But there was a battle all the way in this line, back and forward, back and forward, back and forward, back and forward, and like it was like scrambled. But in the end, I just said to myself, swallow the pride, got down on my knees, received the Eucharist. And when I got up, I got a profound sense of clarity that I got down on my knees, received it on my tongue, because that's the body of Christ who died for our sins. And I was like, this wave came over me. And I walked out of the church in a trance, and a man said hello to me, and it was Davide from our first episode.
Yeah.
And he said, I appreciate the Christian persecution video you did. And we just connected. And his life was very much about the problem that I was having. And I got a phone call from my brother saying, I don't know what's going on and what you didn't knock, but it's all sorted. And I went, what? It's all sorted. And I went, okay. So the next night I went to a special mass on
For Pope Francis.
Pope Francis, rest in peace. And the last time I was in the Basilica was with my mother. And the problem is, Danielle, what was really, really hurting me deeply was I couldn't think of a good memory of my mother. Not one good memory. Was all the screaming, roaring stuff. Applying medication or this, that and the other. It was just all no good memories. And I've so many good memories of a great mother I had. But I couldn't have a good memory, and I couldn't hear her voice.
You could just see that.
All just the bad stuff. And my poor brother's the same, So when the church, I was thinking about my mother and I was praying, and I went and received the Holy Eucharist again on my knees, on the tongue. And when I walked around the back of the church, I got grabbed like that, right? And I felt being grabbed. And I closed my eyes and I could see my mother smiling. And it was so beautiful. It's the first time I've seen her smile in God knows how long. And it was so vivid, like she was in front of me, but also in a different world. It was weird. And every time I kept opening my eyes, she was gone, but I could feel her, but then I just closed it and she was there. And I started crying and tears were flying out of my eyes because I was so happy. Because I knew she was in a good place. Yeah. And I left that church with that sense of peace, and I started doing the rosary every day. The rosary has changed my life, doing the rosary. Really has, like doing Bishop Barron's rosary. For people out there who want to do a shorter rosary,
don't do Bishop Barron.
It's understandable, but I'd say if you want to actually understand the rosary, it's probably the best source to go to.
Just a wee thing to add in there. That's whenever I messaged you as well.
Yeah, you messaged me while I was down there.
Yeah. But sorry, taking you off your train of thought there.
No, it's just it brought me on to the rosary and doing that every day, and Bishop Barron and the mysteries. And every time, you know, you hear the mysteries and they're the same mysteries. They're the same mysteries, but every time you hear something different. And they pop out to you at different points in the meaning of them and the life of Jesus, you know. And you get the criticism, I see people online, the criticism that it's worshiping Mary, and it's not. You're actually meditating on the life of her son and all the miracles that happen. And let's not forget the first miracle that happened, the wedding of Cana.
Yeah.
Jesus turned the water into wine.
For his mother.
Was for his mother. She interceded.
Also as well on the cross, when Jesus died, he says to mother, behold thy son, behold thy mother. He gave her to us, and we must never forget that. And we don't put her above God ever.
Absolutely.
We ask her to intercede, because the wedding of Cana proves that Jesus listens to his mother, and she was the first miracle ever done.
There you go. It's there in the text. And listen, I'm not a theologian or anything like that, but you know, I'm feeling my way through this and taking baby steps. But my life has been touched by God. God has intervened and saved me so many times, and I'm still searching for why. But thank God He did. And the rosary has changed my life, and daily prayer morning to night. And, you know, there's a huge mental health crisis out there now, and a crisis in addiction, and crisis of chaos, and people being lost, and they're looking for something. And actually, they're looking for Jesus and they don't know it. You know, that's the thing. And Jesus is there. All you got to do is invite him, ask him to come, and he actually will. I know there are people out there who understand the atheistic perspective, and that sounds mad. You know, some of them equate Jesus and the Bible to, you know, Greek mythology. There were, you know, generic representations of nature and stuff. This was a man who lived. The historicity is 100%. If you believe in any of the historical figures of the time 2,000 years ago, then you have to believe in Jesus, because there was more written about him than them.
Yeah.
He did die, was crucified, and hundreds of people saw his resurrection. And those people were willing to die for a lie. You think people were willing to die for a lie? And some people, after already denying him, willing to die for a lie. And he's different than any other God in that he came here in human form, became sin, died for our sins to redeem us. No other God, if you want to call it that, or a religion, did that. They didn't, you know.
And he came in peace.
And so,
Shalom.
And actually the rosary is a great way to meditate on his life and actually feel what he went through, to understand his sacrifice for us. We'll never get to understand it. It's a constant, as Father Stephen would say, a constant conversion.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly going towards the light. And you're going to fall back and all that, and you get doubt and fear, which is the other fella. You know what I mean?
We know all about
doubt and fear, but you have to overcome that. And you do that by pursuing the truth, you know? So it's changed I never had peace. I now have peace. I now have patience. I've lost, since that moment where I surrendered to Jesus and asked him to guide me, I've lost about 7 stone weight without training, yeah? I've adapted a fast and carnivore lifestyle. People are wondering how I lost it. That's how I lost it. You were with me all the time. You see, I'm a very bad dinner date because I eat very specific things. And
steak and eggs.
Steak and eggs, and usually only once a day. And butter, and usually only once a day, and sea salt. But that discipline, I actually prayed for discipline, and I did the rosary for temperance, the opposite of gluttony, for a while. Like, I do it for different reasons all the time, like yourself, but I said, please just give me temperance, because I need to learn how to have self-control, you know, and get discipline. And I've had discipline and self-control, temperance, like I've never had in my life. Mental clarity and peace. God incidents constantly happening all the time, signs, confirmation, all the time. People thinking I'm losing my marbles. But I'd ask those people after hearing this episode, would you believe I lost my marbles? Would you believe this stuff if you went through what I went through and experienced it and had the privilege to be graced by God, to experience Jesus, actually. And it's very simple. I just got down on my knees and surrendered to him.
But look, listen, it happens to us all, and it happened to Jesus himself. You know, so what makes you think we're not going to be misunderstood? As Jesus said, the world hated me before it hated you. So that's something to hold on to, because sometimes as well, we can get a wee bit like, And our own families sometimes don't even understand.
Yeah,
You know?
100%. And there's some in my family that don't understand, and some that do. And I'm blessed because I have such a great family, great brothers, great aunts, uncles, cousins, and my grandparents, still two of them with me, Chrissy and Johnny on either side as well. So I was very blessed as well, and there's a lot of strong faith. But there are some among my family and extended family that are now going, this is another extreme behaviour.
There he goes.
But all my extreme behaviours in the past, Danielle, led me to darkness and led me to bad physical and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
This has led me to clarity like I didn't know the definition of until now.
Because you have a purpose now.
Purpose, exactly.
You know what I mean?
And I addressed my spiritual health. So the key for me all along was addressing my spiritual health. The physical and mental took care of itself when I addressed the spiritual. And I looked at the deadly sins, and I looked at the ones that I have the biggest problems with. Pride, and gluttony, They were the two big ones.
Yeah.
And I meditated on them and I prayed on them. I prayed that I could gain the humility to overcome the pride, and I prayed for temperance, and I prayed for patience, another one, which I've been known as the most impatient person you've ever met, and now I actually have a lot more patience. I'm full of patience now. I feel like a patient too right now in this interview.
Just before we wrap it up, I did ask you a question at the very start, which says, why do you want to tell this story? For me, I believe telling the story is part of the healing. I believe God brings us to those places so that we can look back and we can see how far we've come. And basically, I see you transforming all the time. But just before we wrap it up, could you give somebody a message? Because I know you will have touched many hearts today, and people will be sitting in the same positions as you and they'll be crying out. So is there something you could say to those people to give them the hope that you've now found?
People used to get in touch with me for mental health advice. And in regards to creativity and the healer that it is, it isn't the healer, it's a plaster. It's a God-given gift too. And hopefully, people are lucky enough to experience that. But the reality is this, no matter how low you get or how dark it gets, Jesus is always there. That's the thing. And even if you've a big family around you and loads of people there for you, you're still going to feel alone at some point in your life. And when I got down on my knees with Jesus, I felt so alone. That's why to have a great family around me and whatever, but I realised I wasn't alone. And from that moment onwards, as Bishop Barron would say, I was not in control. I was not in control. I'm not now in control, And this is why, people are saying to me, John, stop with all the religious stuff because it's going to ruin your career. And it's a self-destructive thing now because your career is doing so good. That is meaningless to me if I'm not allowed to preach the word of our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ, who saved me and saves me every day and has given me clarity and peace like I've never had. So even if you don't believe, I gave this advice out yesterday on social media, even if you don't believe, right, but you're desperate, right? You're desperate and you don't want to go and pay a therapist for 20 years who keeps telling you to come back, yeah? Okay? Yeah. And it makes you relive your trauma all the time. I'm not saying it's entirely bad, but hey, doesn't sound great to me. If you'd like to try something and it's free, yeah, this is what you try. 1 week, pretend like you act like you believe in God. 1 week. Surrender every day to Jesus. Say, please guide me, Jesus. Please, I'm lost. Guide me. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for everything in my life, my family, all the love in my life, my friends, anything that is real. Thank you. At night time, Our Father, Hail Mary. Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, if you want to throw it in, that's my specialty. If you do that and you go to Mass in a few weeks, in 1 week, you're going to be a different human being. That's what I believe. You're going to be a different human being. And God is going to come in and you're going to go, the first week is going to be like, I'm losing my mind a bit because I feel like there's something going on here.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. The next week, it's going to continue happening until you get paranoia because things are going so good and you're on a high and you're going, I'm losing my mind. Because the other fella's there going, you're losing your mind, you're losing your mind. That's where he wants you.
Yeah.
He wants you vulnerable.
So you can control.
And in doubt. Whenever you're in doubt, he'll get in there. But actually, that's the Holy Spirit. And you are not in control when that happens. And how you keep that up is a daily relationship with God. People often go when stuff goes wrong with their life. Well, why didn't God do this? Why didn't God do that? Well, what were you doing?
Yeah.
Did you build a relationship with God? Imagine having a girlfriend that you never see and you never ring, and every now and again you're ringing her up for the wrong reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
If she has any respect for herself, she's going to do that to you, isn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Well, imagine Jesus Christ, our Lord and Saviour, who came down here, became human form, died for our sins, right? And then we build no relationship with him, and then we expect them to just come and immediately stop whatever bad situation is going on in their life without ever having given him the respect, without him receiving that, building that relationship. But if you have that relationship day in, day out, morning and night, he's always there. He's always there for you. And it's very simple, and it's free, and it's the most nutritional thing you can do for your soul on this earth. So that's what I'd say to all the people who are lost, trauma, addiction, all that. It all leads back to one thing, which is Jesus Christ, our Lord and Saviour.
Amen to that.
All glory to him.
On that note then, I just want to say a big thank you for sharing your testimony with us. I know it takes great courage to come here and to tell our truths, because we're making ourselves vulnerable in front of others. So I'm honoured to be sitting here alongside you and to hear. Next week, though, I'll be glad to have you back beside me. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Danielle.